In a world where the cyber threat landscape is evolving at unprecedented pace, the need for skilled cybersecurity professionals who are prepared to defend against the next wave of cyber threats has never been more pressing. And yet, I was recently reading that a startling number of organisations feel unprepared. And they feel uncertain if their teams possess the capabilities needed to fend off those future attacks. And this dilemma begs the question, where does the solution lie? Well, today we have the privilege of hosting Max Vetter. He's the VP of Cyber at Immersive Labs, and we're going to delve into this critical issue because I was reading that Immersive Labs research revealed a surprising trend, or not, depending on your age, and that is that junior cybersecurity personnel are engaging with content significantly more challenging than their more experienced counterparts, and younger people get a lot of stick. But it seems that old people, like myself, may be stuck in our ways, maybe just coasting, just going through life, just taking our foot off the gas, whereas younger people, more ambitious, more interested in the technologies and stopping attacks. So for me, this highlighted a gap in that continuous skill development among industry veterans. So Max is going to bring to light the essential strategies for fostering a culture of continuous learning within cyber teams, bringing people together and emphasising the importance of staying abreast of industry trends and threats for everyone, from the most to the least experienced, and how the two can complement each other. So today we're going to explore the intricate balance between experience and adaptability in the cybersecurity domain. Now, before I get today's guests on, it's time for me to mention the sponsors of Tech Talks Daily. And in an era where digital security is non-negotiable, legacy managed file transfer tools, they simply don't cut it now. So that's where Kiteworks comes in, revolutionising the MFT landscape with unparalleled security credentials, including the much coveted FedRAMP moderate authorization. This isn't just about compliance though, it's about offering a secure, efficient platform for today's remote workforce. So with Kiteworks, you can benefit from advanced file sharing, email security and customizable integrations, all within a platform designed to safeguard your most sensitive data. So don't let outdated technology compromise your security. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer. Get started today by going to kiteworks.com. That's kiteworks.com, where security meets sophistication. But enough from me. Let's get today's guest on now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. My name is Max Vetter. I'm the VP of Cyber at Immersive Labs. And as the VP of Cyber, I run the whole cyber team that creates all the amazing content that goes, the cybersecurity content that sits on Immersive Labs. A bit of my background, I was a police officer, and then I went into as a contractor for GCHQ for a few years before joining Immersive Labs. So a relatively interesting background and lots of stories we could tell another time from that.
Wow, man, there was a backstory I cannot walk away from there. How did you go from that world to what you're doing now in the world of tech and everything? There's got to be a story there, right?
Yeah, well, it was kind of all tied in. I left university and started life in a private investigations body, a part of the International Chamber of Commerce, actually, and we were doing online investigations that led into cyber investigations, and that led then into the police as a kind of joint role. So I was both in private sector and in the police, and obviously that led to GCHQ and then here. So yeah, it kind of does tie together though. On the face of it, maybe it seems random.
There seems to be a whole other episode just waiting there, so we may have to get you back on. But one of the reasons I invited you on today was I was reading about your research that highlights a fascinating trend where junior cybersecurity professionals are engaging with content that is on average 5% more challenging than their most experienced colleagues. So can you elaborate on the significance of this finding and also the implications for cybersecurity preparedness, of course?
Yeah, so I think one of the key things we find is, and anyone listening will know, that what the young people have. They typically have lots of drive, typically have lots of perseverance, and especially in the cyber industry, from my background, I've always kind of like what we call criminal innovation, which is, the hackers that why we're all here and listening to this is there are hackers out there, and they're really good at what they do. And actually, what you find with young people, they have a lot of that drive to keep up with them, and a lot of the qualities that you see in hackers actually, which is perseverance, drive, and that kind of innovative mindset. And I think you could maybe, old people like us, Neil, who've lost that spark for the innovation. Maybe that's due to it. And I think why it's significant is obviously you do rely on your most senior people in cybersecurity, and they're super important to, they know the most, they've been in the industry the longest. But I think what takeaway from that would be just make sure you have a diversity of voices in the room, because those young people who might not have the experience, but definitely have the drive and sometimes have like more sharp skills than maybe the more seasoned professionals.
Yeah, and I've seen this in the creative industries before where, I don't know, you've got a 30-year-old graphic designer or motion designer, and they're scared to death. And when these kids come out of university, they hit the ground running. They've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of YouTube videos and everything that they've done their research on, and they just completely blow them out the water. I think we underestimate this sometimes, just how much time and effort they put into their work, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of kind of negativity talk about millennials and Gen Z and all that stuff from the older people, but it's definitely the inspiration for the joy for work and the interest in being there, and I think that's what we're seeing in the research that we've got here.
So that gap between junior and senior professionals, especially in terms of engaging with challenging content, it almost suggests a potential issue with training and continuous skill development. And as you said, as you get older, you may lose your love for that a little bit. But we are in a world where we all need to continuously learn to stay ahead of the game now. So in your opinion, what are the main barriers preventing those seasoned cybersecurity professionals from pursuing that more demanding training? Is it the business not investing in them, or is it something else?
I think it's, as always with these things, it's probably a combination. And I think the seasoned professionals, usually they've got all the certifications under the sun. They've done that early in their career. So in terms of their kind of professional CV, they're like, well, what does it give me? So that's a kind of push factor. They're not really getting that. Maybe they get on more certifications every year, but generally a lot of them might think they know it all, and that's sometimes they do, but there is kind of risk there in that, I've done it all, so why would I need to do any more professional development? But I think like you mentioned, that the business also might not be prioritizing those people because they're like, well, they're safe pair of hands. We don't need to prioritize them. They just do their job. They're so good that we kind of, I know we're sometimes guilty of it, that, you're just fine because we know you're here every day, and so we don't need to put that extra effort in getting your personal development up because you've been here years,
Yeah, absolutely. And given the rapidly evolving landscape of cyber threats, on the flip side of that, though, staying updated with those latest trends and threats is absolutely crucial. And the barrier of entry for hackers is lower than ever with things like AI at our fingertips now, and so many different forums where people can hang out. So how do you Immersive Labs facilitate this continuous learning process, both for those junior team members and the senior team members that seem to have been forgotten about? What do you do there?
Yeah, so so when we started Immersive Labs, it was kind of about making sure we got a simple way that you could create, like me and the CEO, James Hadley, the founder, we were instructors, and we would find that just getting a virtual machine and a virtual network set up was a massive effort in itself, and there would always be errors and everything like that would be really, really difficult. So the point about Immersive Labs initially was, well, we just put that all on the cloud. You just click a button and it spins up a lab, and you kind of take out all that barrier to entry, so you can just get to learning the cyber stuff rather than having to configure all these virtual networks. But actually, very quickly, what happened after that was what we call our cyber threat intel labs. And so we realized not only, compared to classroom training, we could be more up to date, but we could actually be up to date to the matter of hours or days or hours. And so we release basically content that is hitting the news as fast as possible. And, we do it within hours sometimes. WannaCry we got in 4 hours. I think the recent XZ supply chain compromise of SSH, that was potentially a massive impact. And again, we got that a few days after that came out. And so the whole point of that is, can we ignore the whole training element of long term? You want to upskill yourself and train yourself, which is still valid, but can you actually learn about a new threat within hours of it, potentially before it hits your network? And one of our HSBC is one of our customers, and they used those labs to actually do that with the F5 vulnerability. They actually upskilled on it before it caused them any problems. So that's how we do it, is if we can get you hands-on dealing with that vulnerability or that threat as soon as possible, hopefully before it becomes a threat to your network. That's kind of how we keep all these professionals, upskilled and ahead of the curve.
And before you came on the podcast, I was doing a little research on you, and I know that you're passionate about building a culture of continuous learning across all levels of cybersecurity professionals. And we will have a lot of business leaders listening, thinking maybe they're nodding in agreement with much of what we're saying, and they know they need to make changes. What strategies do you recommend for any organisation to encourage and support this mindset among their staff, particularly some of those more experienced members of the cybersecurity team?
Sadly, like with any cyber professional, the answer is time and money, which is maybe always the thing that is difficult. But I think you need to take understanding of training or upskilling, or any of the words we use here, exercising. You have to take it seriously as you would, say, if you're going to buy EDR software or endpoint detection and any other technical software that you do use to protect your network. You got to think of your humans as part of that. And if you're buying a platform like Immersive Labs, or if you're spending lots of money on training, you wouldn't expect someone to just do it in their own time, or just, so typically what we say is you have to dedicate time, which is essentially resource and money, to that. So if you say, right, this is important for the business and its security posture, that we will give someone, I don't know, half a day every 2 weeks, or whatever the amount that you can fit in, because again, and budget for that. You would budget for technology to protect your network. You also have to budget for making sure the people who are running the technology that are protecting the network actually are up to date and skilled. And that's maybe everyone says more time and more money, but I think it's forgotten when it comes to the humans. So it's just important to make that a budget item.
And your research also points to a possible complacency or lack of organisational focus as reasons behind that readiness gap. And in nearly 3,000 interviews on here, we spoke many, many times over the last 7 or 8 years on does the boardroom get the value and ROI of cybersecurity? And so much of that has changed in recent years. But how can leaders within the cybersecurity field address and overcome some of these challenges to better bolster their team's defence capabilities against new threats? Anything you can share around that too?
Yeah, everyone's busy. Yeah, everyone's got their metrics, their targets, their KPIs, and everyone, like you said, the board is starting to recognize it. The reason the board is starting to recognize it is they see CEOs getting fired. And, when a CEO gets fired because they've been hacked, suddenly all the other CEOs look around and go, oh, okay, this is not just, I can't just, sometimes we talk about the CISO as the fall guy, the Chief Information Security Officer. But now it's so big that cyber is so impactful. It could, not only the CEO could be fired, but it could take your whole company down. So that does change how board views cyber. We, in security, we would always say it should have always been there, but, everyone gets to it in their own time. But so I think understanding that everyone's busy, and if you're talking about a security culture, which is what we talk about a lot, is how do you get a security culture? And it's really the time and the effort to throughout the organization, because it's actually not the security team really anymore. It has to be the developers, it has to be the receptionist. Right? Everyone is at the forefront of the attack surface, and so if everyone isn't upskilled to you can't just leave people out now. So you really have to think holistically about the whole organization and make sure everyone is thinking security. So yeah, it's that fostering that culture, which doesn't happen by accident. You don't just get a security culture. You do need to, put time and effort into making sure that you have the security culture throughout the whole organization.
And in the research that we're talking about today, can I also ask that you share some insights into the checklist that you mentioned in that, just so organisations can ensure their cybersecurity teams are adequately prepared to face some of these new threats that we're talking about? And what were some of the key elements of this checklist, just for anyone that's not seen this?
Yeah, so we kind of have a few different things that we do. We call exercise, benchmark, upskill, and improve. So you exercise, and that means if you can test your teams, and this is everyone from the board down to the boardroom to the storeroom, we say, you exercise them on what would happen if, what would happen if a ransomware attack happened, what would happen if, your network got taken down. And so you exercise first to see what you're like, and that allows you to benchmark against yourself, or at least an initial benchmark, or a benchmark against peers. And then from that you can find the gaps. So who needs upskilling? Where are our gaps? Is it the whole security team? Is it individuals within that, or is it people elsewhere? And then it's all about proof as well. How do we prove? Because what we find from training's great, but when you're talking about the board, and you talked about ROI,
yeah,
how do you prove ROI of training? And a lot of we've had some customers who say, well, I think there's one customer spending 10 million a year on cybersecurity training. And they said, well, it must work because I spend $10 million a year. That's not proof. That's just kind of, because it's quite hard in classroom training to know that the person turned up, to know they learned as much as the person sitting next to them. Did they go there and get drunk every night and were hungover in the day? And so it's really, how do you prove that people have the skills they need? Because training is secondary, really. It's not about training people. It's about the outcome of training, which is, in this case, making sure you are resilient to cyber attacks. So you have to prove it. And the good thing about that is then you can prove to the board or the exec that, this money we spent on training is actually worth it, because we're raising our security benchmark there and baseline. So yeah, that's exercise, benchmark, upskill, improve. And then I would add some more kind of keywords, which is prepare and practice. If you haven't run a security, and this goes for everyone listening, whether you're CEO down, if you haven't run a simulated attack, and it doesn't matter where you are in the org, if you've never done one, then you're not prepared for when it does happen. And we found, through lots of research, if you're prepared, even if you've done it once, you're much better at resolving it if it happens. Because the other thing about hacking is it's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
And so you have to be prepared and you have to practice. So practice those things like you would a fire drill. You walk outside every month or whatever, and you stand in the right place. You should do the same for cyber, because that could take your company down just as much as a fire could.
And you mentioned there, they're going from the storeroom to the boardroom. I also mentioned clients paying 10 million a year thinking that they're covered. And I've also seen those dreaded compliance training tests where once a year the employee just hits next, and hopefully gets that multiple choice right. And maybe even get some people in finance that will go befriend somebody in IT just to help them skip through it so they can get through it quickly. Are organisations moving away from these approaches now, or is that still largely out there as well?
I'd love to say yes. Of course, every organization. No, sadly, I mean, and we have the whole range, even in our customer base. We have customers who just want it for compliance purposes, and we have customers who are they've drunk our Kool-Aid, which is, it's about the skills that you can get across, and it's about making your cyber risk less, really, which is the ultimate. How do we stop you getting hacked? But if we are hacked, how do we mitigate the worst impact of that? So yeah, training for training's sake, no one likes it. Everyone's done that training that they learned nothing from, and everyone's clicked to the end to just do the questions to see if, or sometimes, the fact a lot of this the videos have it built in where you can't skip it. That tells you something. Now, from our side, what we think is, if you're excited and interested in the training, and actually all the research shows this as well, you're going to learn a lot more. And so why force people to do training they're not going to learn anything from anyway? Yes, there's the compliance element, but if you can tick that box as well. The whole point about compliance is actually to make you more secure, not to tick a box that you've wasted everyone in the company's time for an hour a year. So I think the industry is moving away from that. Like a lot of our clients, customers come to us saying exactly that when we say, well, what did you gain from doing all that compliance training? But it's a slow thing because, and it's not anyone's fault. That was all there was really, is like, well, how do we show that people have done training? Well, we could all send them to a classroom, but that's really expensive. So let's just put them on this video learning. And that's not the way we want to go, but that is kind of understandable. So yeah, I think the industry is slowly catching up.
And I'm curious, from everything you've seen in your experience around this as well, what impact does the integration of more hands-on challenge-based learning have on the effectiveness of cybersecurity training, especially in preparing professionals to tackle unforeseen challenges? Is there anything you've seen about that? Is the learning more impactful when it's more hands-on?
Yeah, well, exactly. I think anyone will know, if you're going to learn to drive a car and they told you, like I did some training myself once, and it was I won't mention what, but it was a cybersecurity training course, and I turned up and there were no computers in the room. And I questioned this, and they're like, "Oh no, it's just on paper." And again, if you turn up for a lesson in a car, and there wasn't a car there, I think most people would question, "Is this going to get me the skills I need to pass that exam?" And it's the same thing, getting the reason we like to think it works with us is we try and put people exactly in their role as a job. So if you're, a network admin or a SOC analyst, we get you in the software that you're using, real attacks coming in, so you actually see what it's really like, and it would be really like in your day job, which also happens to be more engaging and more interesting. And so it is. We have to move away from that, where you're just doing training for training's sake, and to be an ethical hacker, you don't need to actually touch a computer is not probably the way you want to go.
100%. And I say, if we look to the future, to an ideal future, a utopia of sorts, how do you see the role of cybersecurity training evolving to meet the demands of this increasingly complex threat landscape, which is only going to get more complex with AI and quantum computing, possibly breaking cryptography and all that stuff? What innovations or shifts do you anticipate will be necessary to keep pace with some of these changes and challenges ahead?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned AI, and AI is, everyone's talking about it, and there's a reason everyone's talking about it. It's everywhere. It will cause challenges, but I feel as an ex-copper, we're always on catch up. So we're always, you never know what the criminals will innovate until you see it first. So you're naturally always on catch up, but AI will help us as well as them. And I think we're moving away from, as you mentioned, just training people like, let's sit you in a room, let's do rote learning, and then you'll be really good at cybersecurity. That, I think we're already moving away from that, but I can see us moving to a place where you're continually identifying risks. So if you're in an enterprise, there are lots of innovative things that you can analyze individual risks per person. So again, now it's not the same training for everyone. You get really specific training for certain people based on their risk areas. So that's the way I see it really going, is that training is less relevant. It's the outcome. That's the whole point. So if we just get the right people, the right amount of training at the right time, then we're going to be all better off generally. So that's the way I see it going. And yeah, AI and quantum and blockchain and all those buzzwords, they will play into it. But I see them as kind of tools that just enhance or make the general thing, which is hackers are trying to hack into what we do, and we're trying to stop them. I think they're just kind of tools that'll supersize both sides really. So it's kind of an arms race, but I don't see it, changing the race. It's still the race between us and the hackers, and it's just using the tools we can. But yeah, not wasting time or money is key in all that. You don't want to waste anyone's time. You don't want to waste your money on if we're talking about training that isn't ineffective, or if you're talking about tools that don't work or prove that you're more safe. So, I think all those things are just features in, what we'll go towards is that actually we have a lot more telemetry about where our risks are and how do we help. We say the human's actually the strongest link, not the weakest link, but that's the right trained human is the strongest asset. The wrong trained human is the weakest link. So that's the important bit there is making sure all humans are as strong as they can be.
And it's so refreshing to hear you say that. So I cannot thank you enough for sharing your insights with me today. But before I do let you go, I want to ask you to leave one final gift to people listening all around the world. We have an Amazon wish list, a library of sorts of books that all my guests recommend. All I'm going to ask you is, what would you like to add to that bookshelf and why for other people to check out?
Yeah, I recently read something called Trusted Executive, a book called Trusted Executive. And I think those of you in management positions moving away from the technical side of cyber, and as I mentioned, it's all about people. And if you want to be trusted as a manager and as a leader, that's what the book goes into. Really, it's all about trust, and there's it talks about ability, integrity, and benevolence under that. So that was quite impactful, just because, especially with cyber, the people who understand people and a diverse set of people, because in cyber and tech, there's always a big diversity of people and thought. It's understanding those people, because essentially if you're a leader, you need the people to work for you to do a good job. And that all ties back. So yeah, that was really useful book to recommend to anyone, because it talks about why being a good leader actually is good for a company in all, because if people are happier and they trust the leaders, then they do a better job in general. So yeah, that's the one I recommend.
Fantastic. Lovely choice. I'll get that added straight to our Amazon wish list. And obviously we've covered a lot in a short amount of time, so we've talked extensively about some of your research. So anybody listening want to find out more about that, about Immersive Labs, connect with you, ask your team a question, any of that stuff, where would you like to point everyone listening?
Yeah, please go to our website, immersivelabs.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Max Vetter, and shoot me a message, or and you can connect through the website as well for a demo or anything else like that. So connect that way.
Well, as I said, we did cover a lot there, and I think that need for cybersecurity professionals to have skills to defend against the new cyber threats has never been more critical, and that is for junior and senior members of the team, and covered so many great points. So I urge people to check out your website, and I'll leave a link to the report or research as well. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story today, and we will have to get you back at some point to find out the other half of that story.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Cheers.
So as our conversation with Max comes to a close, I think we're left with a profound understanding of the current state of cybersecurity training and its implications for organisational preparedness against cyber threats. And Max's insights into the discrepancies between junior and senior cybersecurity professionals in their approach to learning and challenges, I think it exposes a critical vulnerability with organisations. And yes, it's evident that fostering a culture of continuous education and adaptability across all levels is paramount to maintaining robust cybersecurity defences, but sometimes it doesn't feel that easy. So for me, my conversation with Max prompts me to reflect somewhat on the broader implications of cybersecurity training and readiness, and how organisations could maybe bridge the gap between experience and ongoing skill development to bolster cyber resilience, and also how these two parties, these two age groups, can learn so much from each other. But hey, this conversation never truly ends. How do you envision the future of cybersecurity training and preparedness in the face of rapidly evolving threats? Let me know as always, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilCHughes. If you're not following me or messaging me on there, why not? Come on, you know where I am. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. Other than that, if you're quite happy just lurking, I'll be back in your podcast feed waiting for you bright and early tomorrow. But more than anything, just thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.